Hello girls and squirrels, happy Wednesday and welcome back to my channel.
Hi, I'm Christina Sherilyn and I'm a vintage reseller, which means I rummage through people's unwanted items and find the most amazing vintage pieces to give them a second chance. I love styling up vintage clothing in a modern way, investigating the history of each piece, and most of all, I love the treasure hunt. So follow along on my journey and let's see what we can find.
So today's video, as you saw by the title, is going to be all about spring and summer trends for 2021. I'm sorry, I'm a little late on this video. I don't know where time has gone this year. I can't believe we're already almost done with March. That's insane to me. But anyways, today's video is going to be all about those trends. I always love doing these videos for you guys because I know it helps you a lot in your sourcing for the upcoming seasons. So without further ado, we have a lot of trends to cover, so let's just get right into it. All right, so let's start with aesthetics. Which aesthetics are going to be on trend for spring and summer? The biggest aesthetics going around the internet right now. So first up, we have cottagecore. Cottagecore has been around for almost a couple years now, full force, and it is not going anywhere. It's basically like a prairie aesthetic, like a girl living in the woods in a cottage baking bread all day. That's what cottagecore is. Number 2 on the list is goblincore, which is kind of like cottagecore. It's just a little grungier, a little darker, a little more nature inspired. Then we have academia. Academia is basically the new hipster. It's exactly what you would think academia would be. There are different subsets of academia, just like with every aesthetic, but the main ones being light and dark academia. Light is lighter colors and dark is darker colors. You also have romantic academia, like Victorian academia, things like that. But those are really words that you want to use to describe a certain style of a piece. And then the academia part would be to describe the aesthetic of the piece. So next on the list is fairycore or fairy grunge. It's exactly what you think it is. Just think of a fairy, but in grunge. It's like a really girly cottagecore girl meshed with a grunge girl. That's what it is. Next on the list, we have witchy. Think of like Stevie Nicks. It's like a bohemian goth kind of style. And last on the list for aesthetics is indie. So indie is like late 90s, early 2000s fashion. I know. And it's probably one of the biggest aesthetics right now, especially if you sell on Depop. Pick up these indie pieces. I know for us who grew up in the 2000s, this is just all right, so that brings us to decades. Which decades are on trend? I'm going to start with most popular to least popular from what I've seen. So first on our list is early 2000s. Like I mentioned, indie is a huge aesthetic right now. Early 2000s is definitely the hottest decade at the moment. Number 2 on the list is 60s and 70s. There was a ton of 60s and 70s influence on the runways this spring and summer as there was in fall and winter. Number 3 on the list is 90s. Now 90s has been on trend for a couple years and it's not going anywhere. It's not as popular as it was, but it is still definitely a huge trend. And last on the list for decades is 80s. I think we're starting to see 80s kind of fizzle out. It had a huge boom a few years ago, but now it's kind of starting to die out. We're really just holding on to the shoulder pads from the 80s and the puff sleeves from the 80s. All right, so moving on to color, I'm going to put the Pantone Spring and Summer 2021 palette on the screen. So if you guys want to pause the video and take a screenshot of it, but some colors to note are going to be sherbet pastel tones, yellow and camel combo. So like a very 70s inspired color palette. We're going to be seeing a lot of red, bubblegum pink, and then a black and white combo as well. Black and white combo, especially like check print, is very reminiscent of the early 2000s, so that's no surprise there. So now that we've covered colors, let's cover prints. First, we have the bold tropical print. You can find these prints on a lot of vintage style vacation wear, which brings us to retro vacation. Again, just that bold tropical print. A lot of times it's reminiscent of like 50s style vacation scenery, like palm trees, old cars, neon signs. Next on the list is delicate earth. So this is like a very hippie kind of bohemian style. You see it a lot in the bohemian style patchwork, like pants and stuff like that. We also saw a lot of folk style florals. So again, like the quilt or the patchwork. This has a lot to do with the cottagecore trend. Then we have watercolor florals. It's just a big floral pattern with those beautiful, what looks like watercolor brush strokes and those beautiful soft colors. Then we have pressed flowers, again, very nature inspired. A lot of spring and summer trends right now are very nature inspired, which has a lot to do with the year we just went through with quarantine. A lot of people have gotten into nature because that's all we can do. So you'll see a lot of these nature trends throughout this video. Then we have twisted geometry. This is kind of a nod not only to the 80s, but also we saw a lot of this in the early 2000s as well. Just those bold kind of geometric prints. Of course, we have stripes. Stripes, I feel like always comes back for spring and summer. I don't know why, it's just always been a thing. So you can always count on stripes selling well. It's a good basic. Next on the list is pattern contrast. This is where you wear 2 or 3 different patterns. You may even choose to wear patchwork. But like I talked about back in the fall and winter for 2020 going into 2021, pattern mixing is the new color clashing. So like today, I'll give you an example. I have these pattern pants on, and then I also have a pattern headband on, but they're 2 different patterns, but somehow they work, you know, because it's anyways, pattern mixing. My ADHD brain has been all over the place as of late, and I apologize for that. All right, so now that we've covered all of that, let's get into just the overall fashion trends. Before we jump into this, let's play a little game real quick. Let me know down in the comments below what you think the biggest fashion trend for spring and summer is going to be. Just let me know down below. I'll give you a hint, 2020. That's all I'm gonna say, 2020. Did you put your answer? All right, let's see if you are right. Drum roll, please. The #1 fashion trend for spring and summer is going to be face masks. If you are right, give yourself a round of applause. Also, if you're not wearing a mask, wear a mask, please. When it comes to face masks, it's just become a part of our wardrobes now. There's been a lot of matching. A lot of companies have started selling face masks with tops so that the patterns match. A lot of people are making matching sets on Etsy and things like that. But on the runway, specifically for spring and summer, we saw just plain black face masks because they're basic, they go with everything, and you don't have to worry about matching to your outfit when you have just a black face mask. So that is the #1 trend on the list. How very 2020. Next on the list is cropped cardigans. Cardigans in general, but specifically in the spring and summer, we're going to be seeing a lot of cropped cardigans. And again, this has a lot to do with early 2000s being so on trend. The cropped cardigan was everywhere in the early 2000s, and it is coming back. Which leads us to spring knits. What I mean by that is just kind of more like open knits, lightweight knit cardigans, knit sweater vests like this, whether they're button front or they're a pullover style sweater vest. Those are all going to be very on trend this season. Then we have slouchy jeans and trousers. This is what I was talking about with the indie style, early 2000s. They're taking our skinny jeans. Gen Z has said no more skinny jeans. We're going to wear baggy pants now, which, you know, I'm not super attached to my skinny jeans, but I am going to keep a few pairs. You can't take them from me. Sometimes you need your skinny jeans. They're comforting, they're tight, they're nice. So we're going to be seeing a lot of wide legs, a lot of flares, a lot of baggy style jeans and pants. And of course, we're still holding on to the strong shoulders, shoulder pads, puff sleeves. Like I said earlier, that's kind of the only thing we're hanging on to from the 80s, which leads us into our next trend, puff sleeves. Need I say more? No. Next on the list is ruffles, especially collars. These big, ruffled, exaggerated collars. They usually come with a puff sleeve, so bonus Jonas right there. Keep picking up those ruffles. The bigger the collar is, the better. People are loving collars right now. Next, we have fringe, which is no surprise. We keep it around. We keep it coming back every spring and summer. So as always, pick up the fringe. That leads us to leather, and the big trend with leather is keeping it faux or vintage. I know we could have a huge discussion about whether vintage real leather is fine. In my opinion, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it out there because I've had people ask before, If it's vintage, the damage has already been done, and I would rather save it from going to a landfill and that animal having died in vain just get sent to a landfill. I would rather extend its life, giving it a new home, letting it serve some sort of purpose, as opposed to just going to the landfill. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, and that's fine. We all have our opinions and our differences, but that's my take on that. Then we have folk inspired coats. These are very like patchwork coats. Again, this kind of ties into the folk style florals and cottagecore being such a huge trend. This also has a lot to do with the goblin core trend as well. Speaking of goblin core, mushrooms, just in general, home decor, clothing, prints, whatever, mushrooms, pick them up. Next on the list is cape detailing. So instead of just regular like capes, a lot of dresses on the runway this season had a cape like kind of added to it. And again, this is kind of a nod to that fantasy kind of feel that we're leaning towards nowadays. All these fashion trends have a ton to do with the state that we were in as a world in 2020. It's just, we've all kind of like dreamed of just like baking bread or being in a fantasy novel or, you know, going back in time and just living a simpler life. So cape detailing is adding just a whimsical fantasy element to dresses now. A lot of designers were doing that. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to find this necessarily in the thrift store, but if you do come across it, definitely pick it up. And that leads us to floaty maxi dresses. Those beautiful, you know what I'm talking about, the beautiful prairie, flowy, I'm gonna dance in a field of daisies dresses. They're very 70s, they're very boho, very light. I feel like those are on trend every spring and summer, but they're definitely hot right now, so pick those up. Next on the list is corsets. Now, we saw a big spike in this. I think it was last spring and summer. We saw a big spike in corsets. They haven't gone anywhere. If anything, they've gotten even bigger. Again, this ties into the whole like fantasy thing. Victorian corsets just kind of check all the boxes for all of the aesthetics somehow. So definitely pick up those corsets. Moving on, we have open backs. This is very reminiscent of the early 2000s. This was seen on celebrities everywhere in the early 2000s. And of course, with early 2000s being very on trend, we were bound to see the open back make a comeback. Speaking of the early 2000s, it's going to pain me to say this, but midriff floss or G-string over the pants, you know what I'm talking about. It's back. So much to the point where in the early 2000s, we just had low-rise jeans, so the G-string just naturally showed up on the hips. But now, as a society, we have taken it to a place where we are now building in the G-string. Like a lot of designers just put it on, like it's a part of the pants. You do you. You do you. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh, goodness. Why? Let's move on. Netting and crochet is very on trend for spring and summer. It's another one of those things that I feel like is always on trend. It's just kind of like a spring-summer classic at this point. Next, we have the micro mini skirt. And when I say micro, I mean like, you know what I'm talking about. The early 2000s Paris Hilton 3-inch long skirt. Just why? I feel like this whole video is just jam-packed with early 2000s stuff that I never wanted to see again. And unfortunately, I must. But you know what? If that's your thing, do it. Do you, boo-boo. Next is second skin tops. So this is basically, again, early 2000s. That kind of like netted material where it was like super skin tight. Remember when they used to do like the tattoo pattern and it looked like skin, but it made it look like you have tattoos? It's like that material. Ed Hardy did these tops a lot. That's pretty much the only brand I can think of off the top of my head. But just think that style, that is coming back. Now, one thing I do like about this one is when you layer it. And I love the little mock neck ones. I love when it's like a cheetah print and you put like a grungy black band tee on top and it's just got that tiny little mock neck sticking out of the collar. I think that's super cute, and I think that's a good way to make this trend work. Next on the list is sportswear. Sportswear was everywhere. Again, a lot of this has to do with the state of the world, quarantine, all of that. We have really, as a world, just come together and decided that we will now be wearing sportswear, athleisure, comfy clothes from now on. Speaking of the state of our world influencing these trends, we have pairing casual wear with more dressy items. So as more things are starting to open and we're kind of getting back to normal, but not really. We've got the vaccine now, so a lot of things are starting to get back to semi-normal. A lot of people are now taking that casual dressing that they've been so used to in 2020 and just kind of dressing it up with dressier items. I've seen a lot of people pair like these matching sweatsuits with blazers just to kind of dress it up a little bit. So that's what we're talking about, just the transition back into normal dressing. In my opinion, I think that now that we've had this year of just kind of casual wear, I think that's going to be a trend from now on. We've come to value comfort a little bit more than style at this point, and I think they're going to merge and just kind of be about, there's going to be a balance in the fashion world now where it's going to be comfortable but stylish at the same time. So keep an eye out for those casual pieces, but also don't forget to pick up the dressier items that are a little more casual. An example of this is I have this blazer currently in my Poshmark closet. It is this beautiful chic linen blazer, but because it's linen, it's more casual. You know, it looks dressy and a little elevated, and you could definitely dress it up even more, but paired over like a comfy sweatsuit, that would be super cute. So that's what I mean by keeping like the dressy pieces a little on the casual side so that they pair well with all these casual pieces. How many times can I say casual today? And that leads us to the boyfriend shirt. The boyfriend shirt is kind of a classic and has pretty much been a staple piece for spring and summer. You know, the classic white button-down, oversized men's shirt. That's certainly not going anywhere, and it seems to even be in more demand this season. Next on the list is business casual. We kind of covered that already with pairing casual wear with more dressy wear. Instead of business wear or work wear, business casual is all the rage. I know a lot of people have been working from home for the past year, so being comfy while still being able to look presentable on Zoom meetings is definitely a huge trend this spring and summer. And last and final trend is, of course, loungewear. We already talked about this. We're loving some comfort these days, so pick up those loungewear pieces. I know I have lived, I already did before because I worked from home before the pandemic, but I have especially lived in loungewear. I don't even get dressed in normal clothes to go out. When I do go out, I just have comfy clothes on. Nobody's going to see my face because I'm wearing a face mask. So you know what? I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So now that we've covered the overall fashion trends, let's cover shoe trends. So first on the list is white knee-high boots. This is very reminiscent of the 60s. Next is house slippers. We saw a lot of companies. I know Adidas, Uggs. I'm sure there's one I'm leaving. Nike, I think, did those really like fuzzy slip-on slide shoes. Those are very on trend for spring and summer. Again, people want to be comfy. The cushy flip-flop is coming back. You know what I'm talking about. Early 2000s, cushy platform flip-flop. It's coming back. The amount of times that I rolled my ankle as a teenager wearing those types of flip-flops, it's unfathomable. And I don't understand why we would ever bring such a hazard back, but we are, apparently. So that leads us to platform sandals. Now, these have kind of been on trend for a while. A lot of these platform sandals come in the forms of espadrilles, but basically it's just a platform, the flat platform shoe, like the creeper sneaker, but in a sandal. Next on the list is Western boots. The Western aesthetic has kind of been and off and on trend throughout the past year. Western boots always tend to come around in spring and summer. A lot of people love to pair them with dresses or skirts or even shorts. So definitely keep an eye out for some cool Western boots. For the Western boots specifically, I've seen a lot of white Western boots. They are hard to come by, but if you find a really good pair of white Western boots, definitely pick them up. Next is business casual loafers. Again, we want to be in work mode, but we also want to be comfy. A lot of people are transitioning back into the office and they want to keep their comfort that they had at home. So pick up those business casual loafers. Next on the list is another trend that has been around for a couple years, and that is Trek sandals. So like the Tevas or Tevas, however you want to say it, or Chacos. Those are a couple brands that make these Trek sandals. The ones on trend this season are more chic. They come in like these pretty colors. They're just a little more elevated style-wise than the Trek sandals we're used to seeing. And last but not least is stretchy flats. An example of this would be Teaks. Of course, if you're a reseller, always pick up Teaks. I don't care what condition they're in. They will sell, and they will sell immediately. I've only found one in my almost 3 years of reselling. I sold them for $150 within an hour, so definitely pick up Teaks. The stretchy flats actually were pretty huge in the early 2000s. And they are kind of comfy, so they're easy to slip on. They're easy to just go run errands in. So that's why I think they're coming back. It's just the ease and the comfortableness of them. Is comfortableness a word? All right, so last but not least, we're going to be talking about bags and accessory trends. Let's start with bags. The market tote and straw bags, always on trend for spring and summer. The phone lanyard, which is like the kind of the micro bag. This made a huge comeback in 2019, I want to say, but they're making a big comeback again. People just aren't wanting to carry their purses around or their junk around right now. They just want to have like their phone, their cards, their license, and that's it. So phone lanyards have become very popular. Speaking of people not wanting to lug a bunch of stuff around, medium-sized bags are very on trend right now. The oversized purses are out. When it comes to color, yellow was the biggest trend for bags. Of course, fringe on bags, not going anywhere. We kind of already talked about that. And last but not least for bags is the water bottle holder. Apparently this is just taken off. This is a huge trend right now. There's tons of them. There's tons of handmade ones on Etsy. I don't think you're really necessarily going to be able to find them in thrift stores unless it's just like an early 2000s one. And it's kind of sporty looking, but these beautiful like macrame ones, I doubt you're going to be able to find at a thrift store. But if you do, or you see something similar that could work as a water bottle bag, then pick it up. Or a water bottle holder. I apologize. And last but not least, we have accessories. First on the list is headscarves. Nobody wants to deal with their hair. This is kind of an example. This is actually technically a headband, but it is like the scarf style. Very on trend. Like I said, nobody wants to deal with their hair right now. Whoever does in spring and summer anyways. I always just wear head wraps or hats. They don't really go for a lot of money, but they're good add-ons for bundles. If you're the type of person who likes to include a free gift with your orders, headscarves make a great free gift. When it comes to color for accessories, blue seemed to be the biggest trend on the runway this season. Then we have long necklaces that you could just like throw over your head. You ain't gotta worry about clasping. I feel like we're just getting lazy. That's the whole trend of spring and summer is we have just become comfortable and lazy. But no, on a serious note, long necklaces were huge in the early 2000s. I remember layering a ton of them as a teenager, so they are definitely making a comeback now. And last but not least, we have hats, especially statement hats. The big floppy hat, the big exaggerated hat. Any type of hat that's just funky and not your normal like baseball cap or your normal like fedora or straw hat. I mean, hats are on trend in general for spring and summer, but statement hats are what you want to particularly be on the lookout for. Whew. All right, so that does it for the spring and summer 2021 trends. That was a lot, but basically the overall consensus is early 2000s, cottage core, or goblin core, fairy core, all the cores. If it looks like it's supposed to be in a cottage, pick it up. Cozy and comfortable pieces, knits. We just want to be comfortable this spring and summer and try to get back to some normalcy. And of course, wear your face masks. Thank you guys so much for being here and for watching. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite trend is for the upcoming spring and summer seasons. Are there some trends that you just hate? Let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys. If you like this video, please be sure and give it a thumbs up on your way out. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join our family. We would love to have you. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.